Hello, and welcome to Feels Like Magic, the podcast where you will get the grounded self-development wisdom you might need to feel amazing about the person you authentically are. I'm Jo, a transformational coach, speaker, and author, and for decades I was so stuck in self-criticism that I never thought I would feel good about being me. Now I inhabit a new reality, one where I care way less about what other people think. I'm willing to show up as the person that I am, and I deepen into self-love and acceptance every single day. Honestly, it feels like magic. Each week, I'll share scientifically proven tools, things I've learned from the world's best coaches, and personal stories I know you'll relate to. Ready? Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful one. Welcome to this episode on inner child, which I'm so happy to be putting out into the world. Inner child has been one of the most profound things for me on my journey of self-discovery. And one thing that I want you to know at the beginning is you may have ways of being and deep beliefs about yourself that you think you'll carry forever. You think that it'll just be how things are forever. And what I want to say is inner child is the way out of that. So it really is a hugely profound and beautiful healing. And I'm going to talk today about the myths around it, the reasons why people maybe pull away from it or don't trust it. I'm going to talk about what we do when we heal this part and the impact it could have in your life. And I'm also going to talk about how to start building a relationship with this part of yourself. So get ready. It's going to be a little longer than my usual episodes. And I really want you to have some time and space to truly absorb the messages that are here for you and to see what lands. And so the first thing I want to say is that inner child is not a woo-woo thing that we kind of have made up and we're kind of just pretending is there. It is a real psychological reality. And this is a really quick way to explain what it means. There are parts of you inside, and there are parts of me inside, which are frozen in time. They are younger, scared parts. There are parts which have formed beliefs about the world and how they need to be in the world in order to be safe and to be loved. They are parts which perhaps are carrying some painful memories, some painful things that have happened, and again have formed beliefs around those. And they are, on a fundamental level, parts of ourselves that need nothing but love. They need to be loved on. They need to be able to express what their experience has been. And in that expression, there is liberation. In that expression, there is an opening up of something that may never have felt open for you before. So it's a real psychological thing. And there are some myths about inner child work I want to address right at the beginning so that you get really clear on them. The first one is that if we are doing this work, we need to go back and we need to relive all of our trauma, all of our pain, everything that was difficult. And my love, that is absolutely not the case. So we don't need to go back. We don't need to relive events of the past that were painful in great detail, but there are parts of you that are stuck in those events. They're stuck in that time. And when we do our inner child work, we get to go back to those parts. We get to listen to them. We get to let them express how scared they are, how powerless they feel, whatever the thing is that they have to say. That little boy or little girl who just grew up in the world and was put in an environment and things happened. So we get to go back and we get to really listen. And we get to work with actually taking that part of yourself out of the memory. Because right now these parts are frozen. So we don't have to relive all the details, but we can start to reparent ourselves. And in doing so, take this part of you out of the memory and the frozen place in which they have been stuck. The second myth that I think holds a lot of people back is that we don't want to blame our parents for everything. And you don't have to. So inner child work is not about blame. It isn't. But it is about honoring the experiences that you have had. When we are children, we don't have the freedom always to express ourselves fully. We don't have the understanding of how to do that in a safe way, particularly when we're conditioned into being a good girl or a good boy, and we're told to keep our anger under control, and the anger is an ugly emotion, or whatever else it might have been that you may have been told. And so when we really allow the inner child to speak and honor their experience, again, there's so much freedom and liberation that comes from that. And it is not about blame. But if we are always saying that we're not allowed to express the things that actually happen to us from our point of view, we are always making ourselves wrong. And then we have anger, but we misdirect the anger at ourselves. And that becomes a whole way of being on its own. And I've really experienced that. I had so much anger that I misdirected at myself. And it was only when I really allowed myself to express how things were and I connected with my inner child and I really, really, really let her speak and let her tell me how scared she was and let her tell me all of the judgments that she had of herself. That was the point where things really shifted. So we don't need to blame our parents for everything. And equally, you might be thinking, actually, I've got loads. I really blame my parents. I really do. I've got all of this resentment and anger at them. And with inner child work, what we do is we really let you express that. So we really let you get that anger out. So we can do things like write a letter to your mom and dad that you're never going to send. We can do emotional release where we really let you process that anger and feel really, really powerful in your anger. But again, when we're holding on to blame, we're always in the victim stance. So we're really powerless. So being able to work through that and actually rediscover our power and how powerful we are is where we want to get to. And the other thing that I want to just address is that a lot of times people will come to me and they'll be like, my childhood was good. My childhood was good. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. Beware of the word fine. Right? And so what I want to say is, yes, your childhood may have been extremely loving and you could have had a very safe space with your parents and all of that, but there is still the world that comes in. And if you are dealing with things like deep fear, like procrastination, like always striving, and it never feeling enough, like imposter syndrome, like having a fierce inner critic, all of these things are very closely related to your inner child. I would explore and get really curious. If you have no patterns that are holding you back in your life, beautiful. Beautiful. And you feel whole and complete and worthy of it all. Amazing. Beautiful. And for a lot of the people that I work with, that I know, it's just not the experience of being human. So we get to be in the experience of being messy, in the experience of having had some things happen in our life, which have led us to develop, as I said, certain ways of being. And one of the most beautiful things about inner child work is that when we really ground into this, it's like, that makes so much sense. I totally understand why I feel like I have to overachieve because as a child, there was no space for me to be emotional. And how I got love was that I won prizes for things. So of course I learned that that's how I needed to be. And it can just be a dropping in of like, okay, that makes sense. And what this does is relieve any parts of you that feel like you're broken, feel like you're damaged, feel like you're just not like other people. It makes sense. And so there's a beauty to that as well. And so don't put any conditioning on yourself in terms of coming into inner child. Just get curious. Just get really curious about how this may be showing up for you and playing out for you. And be open to the realization that perhaps you have not seen things as clearly as you might when you open this up and you start to look at it and you're like, So, for example, I did a really deeply healing process with a client the other day that's in my group program. And the next day, she was like, wow, I have felt anxious every morning for so long. And today I didn't feel the way that I felt. I felt maybe 20% of it, but I didn't feel as anxious as I'd been feeling. And that is because her inner child, who had really taken responsibility for a parent, was able to actually let go of that responsibility and realize that taking responsibility for everyone isn't actually her job. So there can be beautiful things that happen with anxiety and depression and these things that we experience when we really figure out what is going on under the surface and we really dig in. And there are the kind of things that we think of in our minds as kind of trauma. I'll talk about two definitions of trauma that I think are really supportive and helpful. There are things that we think of when it comes to this. So the big T trauma, the kind of big events, so maybe physical abuse, lots of violence, sexual abuse, really bad bullying, things that are really, really shocking for a child. That is one kind of type of trauma that comes under too much, too quick, too soon. Too much, too quick, too soon. That is something that is traumatic. But another thing that could have happened is maybe your parents got divorced really fast and you did not see it coming. Your whole world was disrupted. That's also can be really traumatic for a child. And again, it's not about blame, but it is understanding too much, too quick, too soon. If you were in a school that you absolutely loved, but then you had to move and everything was different and you hated the new place, again, something that happens too fast, too much, too quick, too soon. The other type of childhood trauma that is relevant here is too little for too long. So say that you were a really creative child and you had all of this kind of creative energy, but you lived in a house where nobody else was creative and you were made to feel different, or you were made to feel like there wasn't really space for the thing that you wanted to do and express. So you learned to shut it down within yourself. Too little for too long. The same with if you had a really emotionally unavailable parents who couldn't hold your emotional needs. Too little for too long. So we get to go in and leave comparison way over here, like way at the door, before we go anywhere near our inner child. Because it's not about comparing to someone else's experience. It's not about, oh, it's not that bad. This could have happened. It is about hearing this child, understanding their beliefs, their fears, and then going back and helping them to release the things that are no longer working. And your inner child is a beautiful part of you. It's a part that is so pure, is so connected to love, is so connected to awe, to the magic of the world. So my inner child loves to look at patterns and color and butterflies. I can really feel that she thrives when she has the freedom to not be constrained and to look in that kind of awe space. And it's also the part of you that's really connected to intuition. Children feel. So even if something isn't directly said, as a child, you can feel when someone likes you or doesn't like you. So if you have a family member who really had some kind of vendetta against you for whatever reason, that is going to be something that would be traumatic to your inner child, because even if nothing was ever said or done, there is still that sense of something not being right. And then we form beliefs, and these become our core beliefs that we're not worthy, we're not good enough, there's something wrong with us, we're a burden. Any of these things that go really deep in our system and register really deep in our bodies are quite often the beliefs that our inner child is holding on to. And so one of the ways that we can really start to just build a relationship and build connection to our inner child is to get a photo of whatever age it might be. Now, your inner child is anywhere from 0. So the moment you came into the world, there's some research about the womb as well, but let's talk about 0. So 0 to 25 years old, that's the range. So I have done a lot of work with my inner child, the younger part of me, the really sensitive part of me. And then I've also done a lot of work with my inner teenager who had a lot of shame and guilt and worry and judgment and really shut down parts of herself in a really beautifully powerful way. I mean, she did an incredible job, but it wasn't actually what I needed in order to thrive at this point in my life. And so when we come into inner child work, we don't have to go back into your whole childhood and poke around and look for things. It isn't like that. The process is this. We connect to what's up for you in the present. We connect to what is happening in terms of your beliefs and your patterns in the present. So, for example, perhaps in the present, you are procrastinating and you're in this cycle and you're just like, oh, why can't I just get this done? Or I just wish that I could push through this, but you just keep on going in the pattern. There could be a part of you inside who is afraid, is frozen and is afraid to move forward. And so that part of you is keeping you stuck, because if you're stuck, that feels familiar. And this is something that I want to talk about. We mistake familiarity so what is known for safety all the time, and particularly as it relates to inner child. So for example, if you lived in a house where there was a lot of chaos, a lot of violence, you never knew what you were going to get, your nervous system is actually programmed to feel that is familiar. And so we think it is safe. So you may go in and call in a partner who replicates that pattern because you're trying to heal that wound, but also you are trying to really deeply feel that sense of safety, because what is known registers in our body is as safe, even if there were elements of it that were deeply unsafe. So this is why I specialize in inner child and somatics, because if we bring the body in and the nervous system in, then we really do change the game for ourselves. So we are going back to look at what is presenting now and how we can shift into where we want to go. So you come to inner child work when things are just not shifting or working, or you're so self-critical, or you're really stuck in anxiety, or there's just a pattern that's playing out for you, and you've tried other things, you've listened to the podcast, you've read the books probably, but something isn't working. That's when I would really recommend coming to this work. But of course, you can start right now without any of that, right? You can start right now. And so having a picture of your inner child, I have pictures of myself, like usually under 5 are my favorite ones. When we can connect into that inner child, we can really invite forward some compassion. We can really see our purity, our ability to be here on this earth and to feel things and to be part of it. And it's really, really beautiful and special. And whenever we are going into inner child work, we need the compassion, we need the curiosity, we need the adult conscious self to come forward. So there may be part of you that is in judgment of your inner child. I had this with my inner teenager. I had such a difficult time as a teenager, particularly with my appearance. I was bullied and I was called fat and big because I'm very tall. And when I tried to go back to her initially, it was really painful because she didn't really want to have a relationship with me because I had rejected her for quite a long time. I had thrown away all the pictures, and I really just didn't want to go back to that time in my life because it was extremely painful. But going back and doing the healing work has actually been the thing that has freed me up the most, because whenever we are rejecting a part of ourselves on some level, we will never feel enough. We will never feel whole. And that will continue to play out in our lives until we're able to go into these places. And so the potential for this and for what it can give your life and how it can open up your life is absolutely huge. And for example, say that you as a kid, you did all the overachieving and everything went right for you and you always got A's and you always succeeded. When you're an adult and you decide to start your own business and then things don't go to plan, you have no resilience. You have no embodied failure. And so that can feel really tough and really hard, and it can make you collapse. But if we can heal the part of you that thinks that overachieving and being perfect is the only way, and really allow her to be messy and to let her know that she doesn't have to do that, then we are able to shift the pattern. I'm using her because I think of my inner child as a she, even though this wasn't my pattern. Another thing that comes up so often is when a child takes responsibility for their parents' emotions. They then replicate that pattern in their life. So they become people pleasers, they become doormats, they become people who are putting everyone else first, but in a way that's very detrimental to self. So if you resonate with that, the way out of that is to go back to your inner child and let her know, hey, like, I know if really get that it feels like this. And I really understand that that's what it was like then, and things are different now, and help her to understand that she can let go of the pattern. So the two things that we want to do when we are going into inner child work is that we want the inner child to express. If you're connecting to your 5-year-old, they're going to talk like a 5-year-old. So you want to really get into the essence and embody the essence of that younger part of yourself, instead of trying to project what you think they should say on them, because then they just feel dismissed and again they go into shutdown. So we really want to let the inner child express and talk about their experiences, and to just be here and to be an ear for that. And then the second piece, the thing that we really want to do, is to ask them what they need. And you can do this really simply and really quickly. If you feel like an inner child piece part of you is up, you can put a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly. You can close down your eyes and you can just say, okay, I hear you. What do you need? What do you need? And just see. And quite often they might just need to know that everything's going to be okay, that you have them, that you've got it, because otherwise they are going to be acting up and shouting really loudly for your attention. And this can come through quite often in relationship, where we can mistake the person that we're dating for our caregiver, for our mom or our dad, is something that they did. And we need to go back and tell our inner child, it's okay. This isn't dad. This isn't mom. This is a different person. And we get to behave differently here and really start to establish that sense of safety. Otherwise, we can find ourselves really acting up, being really needy, being really anxious, looking for attention, going into withdrawal and shutdown. Whatever the thing is that you learned to do as a child is the thing that you will keep on doing until we can get to the root of what happened and why, and we can start to work with that. And so as you develop and you start to connect in with your inner child, you've got your picture, you're asking them what they need, you're letting them express. Having a coach support you in this process is so helpful, because as I mentioned, there may be a part of you that wants to reject and push away from your inner child. There can be parts of you that want to dismiss your inner child. So really having someone that can hold you in the process of, thank you so much for sharing. I hear you. That must be so scary. And to start to learn how to communicate with your inner child is such a special thing. So just to recap, they need to be heard, fully heard, without censorship, without us scripting, and without us saying, oh, but everything's okay now. You don't have to worry about that. You want to really understand where they're coming from, literally like you have a small child with you who is scared. Instead of just dismissing their feelings, which is going to make them do one of two things, shut down or become very vocal, we want to really just nurture that child and say, yeah, I know this feels really scary. I've got this. And to help them to start to build a sense of trust with you. And this is where the game changes, because we are taught in our society to look outside of ourselves to a partner, to an audience, to our co-workers, to whoever and whatever, the car, the house, the beauty products, whatever, all the external stuff. But actually, when we can come in, we can recognize, oh my goodness, my inner child is really triggered here. What does this part of me need? We can bring ourselves back to regulation in the body. So our heart isn't going really fast, or we don't have this horrible feeling in our gut, but we're just coming back into regulation and safety in the body. And then we're also coming back into, okay, this is a scared part of me that just needs to be told it's okay for us to speak up now, that things are different and she doesn't have to take responsibility. When we can start to play into that and to really heal and build relationship with these parts of ourselves, we just feel so much calmer and in more mastery of the men and women that we truly are in this now moment. And so often in relationships, we can have little children butting up against each other instead of our adult selves. And it's really recognizing, wow, okay, that's not the adult part of me. It's this other part that has such a strong hold. So this is a really powerful process, and it's powerful to come into it and to start to experiment and play with it. It will accelerate things so much for you if you find a coach or a container where you will really get the chance to flex into your inner child and you'll really be held in the process, particularly if there is trauma there. And for me, I had very loving parents. I had a beautiful childhood in so many ways. And I also had a very challenging time. And recognizing that both of those things can coexist was such work for me. And now I feel so integrated with it. So let's talk about some specific examples of other ways that your inner child may be showing up and how I would work with this part of you to help it to feel safe. Let's take, for example, say a childhood where both of your parents were very, very busy. So they loved you and there was love there, but there was just an absence because they were working all the time and they were earning money. And so what you learned to do is you learned to be really self-sufficient, and you learned to pretend that you didn't have any needs. You didn't have anything that you needed to ask for. You didn't want to take up any space. Taking up space is a massive one for your inner child. And you just dealt with everything on your own. How this might show up in adulthood is that you are in procrastination or you're in perfectionism. And both of these are just masks. If you're procrastinating, you're not moving forward. So you're not risking the visibility. You're not risking the exposure of the next thing. This really relates to if you're at all interested in starting a business, or if you have a business and you find yourself in this place, a cycle of procrastination, or even in your career, it doesn't necessarily need to be your own business. That may be because your inner child is afraid of visibility, is afraid of being seen. Perfectionism can be, if I don't get this perfect, then I'm not loved. And what neither of these patterns require you to do is to ask for help, is to go to other people, is to open up. Because when you're in procrastination, you're just kind of doing it on your own. And when you're in perfectionism, you're very much doing it on your own. So the pattern that your inner child thinks is safe isn't challenged. Another thing that can happen is that we feel there are certain conditions put on us. So we have to look pretty in order to be loved, in order to be accepted. And that's the message that we internalized from our caregivers or from the world at large. And that means that we get really obsessive over our appearance, or maybe there's eating disorders, or maybe there is just an obsession with fitness and health and looking perfect all the time, which goes beyond feeling good. It goes into a kind of crippling pattern which you can't step out of. Again, that could be something that we work with your inner child. Say that you're dating and you find that you're pushing men away. You just want to push them away and shut down to the whole process. It's because your inner child didn't feel it was safe to really fully be herself. She didn't think that she'd be loved. And so it's like a shutdown, no go. Say that as a child, you had a dad who didn't model any emotion. to you, and you thought that being a man meant that you weren't allowed to be emotional and you were bullied or you were told off for showing your emotions, so you learned to keep them all inside. Then when you want to get into a relationship with somebody, you are unable to really communicate your feelings, and that means that they don't feel connected to you, and ultimately the relationship fails. And so we can say that we want the thing, we can say we want the business, we can say that we want the relationship, we can say that we want whatever the thing is. But if there's a part of us inside that feels deeply unsafe, it is very, very, very hard to do this. And this is why it can feel so frustrating at times, because it feels like we're battling ourselves. It feels like to get to the thing, the next level, the stage, whatever it is, or to just feel good about how life is, it's a battle. So I had a client of mine who said that she just felt like she was angry and she was broken. And it wasn't until we went back to her inner child and we recognized that there was something that happened in her childhood that was really disruptive to her environment, and also meant that she had a very different experience to her sister. And we were able to heal the parts of her that thought that she was a burden and that she had all of this anger that was wrong, and just really make that inner child feel safe. What had been playing out for her is that she was really looking for validation in relationships. She was really looking for validation in her career. And when we were able to reparent this part, she was then able to come from I've got this. I don't actually need your love. I mean, it's beautiful and I'm so glad it's here and I can receive it, but I've also got deep love for myself. And so when we can allow people to love us from this place, it is so much better for them, because we're not asking for them to have like predicted perhaps how things might go. And this is huge, because what it also does is it models to other people what it is like to be in relationship with someone who isn't needy and desperate and clingy and anxious, but can hold their own and still receive love. So it has a really beautiful ripple effect on the people in your life as well. And so to round this up, you know that now you can start to connect in with your inner child. You have the photo there. You can start to ask them what they need. There is another way that I just want to put in a space that you can go in, and it's called non-dominant handwriting. So I'm right-handed, which is my dominant hand, and I would write out questions in my dominant hand. And then with my non-dominant hand, I would reply as my child's self. And what this does is it really frees up the part of the brain that is used to controlling and analyzing, and it lets that freedom of expression come forward. So it's a really beautiful thing to experiment with. And the way that you might do this is you look at your picture, you get really anchored into your inner child, you start writing down the questions, you feel into them, and you just allow them to respond. This works for some people. It doesn't work for everyone, but it can be a really beautiful way to start to just nurture this relationship. And this would just be asking really basic questions like, how are you feeling right now? What is your favorite color? Who are your favorite people? What do you like to do? And it's really just an effort to get to know this part of yourself without too much pressure. And the final thing that I just want you to leave you with today is that you are not broken, that you are not too damaged, that you are not unfixable. There is no problem. You are not a problem, right? You've just learned ways of being, and there's scared parts of you inside that are crying out for attention. And we get to use this technique, use this relationship to really rebuild ourselves. And it's so beautiful. So no matter what you've been through, no matter what has brought you to this point, no matter what you've done, you are worthy and deserving of love exactly as you are, and so is your inner child. I'm sending you so much love. I would love to know what lands. I am here for any questions. And take really good care of yourself, because you matter and you're more important than you realize. Thank you so much for being here and being you. If you're ready to dive deeper on your self-development journey, visit joannebell.org, where you can sign up to get even more magic, access incredible bonuses, and find out more about working with me.